Are you someone who's wanted to learn how to read your birth chart or wanted to learn more about astrology, but every time you try, it's super confusing and you don't know where to start? Then I want you to keep watching this video because today I'm going to break down how to start learning astrology in 3 easy layers. Hi, my name is Haley. I'm the Virgo godmother. I've been studying astrology for over 6 years, and in that time, I've learned a lot about astrology. I've read tons of charts, and today I want to show you how you can start reading birth charts and how you can start your astrological journey. So first, let's build the framework for understanding astrology. You can kind of think of astrology like a language, and your birth chart is how you write out that language. If you're a person who's ever tried to study a language that isn't your own, especially if it has a different writing system than the one you're used to, then you know that when you try learning that new language, it's confusing, you don't know what people are saying, you don't know how to read it, and overall, you're pretty lost. It's the same thing with astrology. Astrology is a language from the sky. I know that sounds kind of weird to say, but that's really what it is. And your birth chart is just like a new writing system, as if you were learning a language that humans speak. This is a language that the sky speaks. And your birth chart is how we write out that language. I found that thinking about astrology like a language rather than a bunch of facts to memorize really helped me in my journey to learning how to read birth charts. Also, most people know their sun sign. So when you hear someone say, "I'm a Virgo," that means that they have a Virgo sun. But your birth chart is actually made up of several different planets, several different signs, and they're all communicating with each other in different ways. Your birth chart is a snapshot of the sky when you were born. And that's why your birth time being accurate is so important. The difference of a couple minutes can change your entire chart. But enough about that, let's get into the basic 3 layers of astrology. Number 1, the planets. The planets in astrology tell you about the energy being expressed. The planets represent energy, different types of energy. And yes, when I say planets, I'm including the sun and moon, but I know that the sun and moon are not planets. But in astrology, we refer to them as planets as a shorthand. However, they can also be called luminaries because they illuminate. They're the things that give off light. But that aside, let's get into the planet. The sun represents your ego. It represents your personality. It represents the natural energy, the natural light that you give off to others. Your moon represents your emotional experience, your emotional needs, and overall how you feel in your body. Mercury represents your communication style, your thinking style, and overall how you interact with others. Venus represents how you give and receive love. Venus represents your romantic experience and overall represents your aesthetics. Mars represents your drive and ambition and where you get your energy from. Jupiter represents your abundance, where you can expand, and also where you like to learn. Saturn represents discipline, hard work, and sometimes can indicate hardship. Uranus represents individuation, surprises, and innovation. Neptune represents dreaming, creativity, and the ethereal. And Pluto represents transformation, changing from one thing to another, or said simply, death and rebirth. You also have your rising sign, which is not a planet. It is a mathematical point in your chart, but this is called your identity projection point. The rising sign is also sometimes called the ascendant, and you will find it over here in a chart. All of these planets represent a certain energy being expressed. Is this your communication energy? Is this your personality energy? Is this your emotional energy? Is this your expansion energy? Is this your discipline energy? And so on and so forth. Now, layer 2, the signs. The signs tell you how that energy is being expressed. Let's do a quick rundown of the signs. Aries is a go-getter sign. It is impulsive, and Aries is sometimes associated with being a little bit aggressive. Taurus is a sign concerned with the material, being grounded, and overall being rock solid. Gemini is intellectual, preferring stimulation of the mind. Gemini can also represent the extremes. Cancer is nurturing, caretaking, and overall represents the maternal. Leo is showy, prideful, and overall is a sign that wants to be seen. Virgo is about refinement, service, and can be analytical. Libra is about social popularity, keeping the peace and balance. Scorpio is about plunging the depths of the human experience, whether that is in the psyche or in the physical realm. Scorpio can be considered intense. Sagittarius represents philosophy, higher learning, and overall is concerned with thinking about things in a deep way. Capricorn represents top-down administration, categorizing, and overall being organized in a way that is calculated. Aquarius represents innovation, the unusual, and doing things for a large group of people rather than the individual. And finally, Pisces represents creativity, intuitiveness, and feeling. The signs tell you how the energy is being expressed. For example, if you have Venus in Pisces, that is the energy of love being expressed in a creative and idealistic way. If you have Mars in Leo, that is your energy being expressed in a showy and sometimes prideful way. The basic formula, you take the energy of the planet, whatever the planet represents, and then you layer on top the sign, and that tells you how the energy is being expressed. And then finally, we're at our third layer, which is the houses. The houses tell you where this energy is being expressed. Said simply, the houses represent topics of life. And I'm going to go through them right here. The first house represents yourself. It represents your body, your identity, and how you come off to the world. The second house represents money, material possessions, and self-worth. The third house represents siblings, communication style, short distance travel, and ritual. The fourth house represents family, lineage, and where you come from. The fifth house represents creativity, play, short-term relationships, children, and how you receive love. The sixth house represents routine, work, health issues, and oddly enough, pets. The seventh house represents one-on-one relationships broadly. Normally, this gets lumped into romantic partnerships like long-term marriage or long-term relationships in general. It can also represent business partnerships, but broadly it represents one-on-one interactions. The eighth house represents transformation. It represents inheritances. It represents the taboo, and it represents death and rebirth. The ninth house represents higher learning, higher education, travel like long-distance travel, astrology, politics, law, and spirituality, specifically in a religious sense. The 10th house represents career, legacy, reputation, and how you are known to other people, your lasting impression. The 11th house represents your community, friends, the people around you, and how you give love. The 12th house represents the subconscious, things that are hidden from us, and it can also represent having to stay in the hospital or being institutionalized. The houses show you where this energy is being expressed. For instance, if you have Mars and Leo in the first house, you might be a go-getter type. You might be someone who really identifies with their energy, and it is a part of who you are as a person. It is a part of your personality. You might have a dramatic flair to you. You may have a way of doing things that make you a little bit of a showman. Your energy and drive has style, and it's represented in actions related to yourself. If you have Moon in Virgo in the second house, you may be critical of your self-worth, because Moon in Virgo is one to analyze and criticize one's emotions, and when it's in the house related to self-worth or material possessions, that means that it could be expressed in being critical of your self-worth. And so you take one layer, one piece at a time, and you just start layering the different things on top. And now, how do you even pull your birth chart? Well, I recommend going to a website like astro.com and clicking on the free horoscope or free chart selection button. From there, you need to enter in your birth data. So that's your birth time, birthday, and birth location. If you don't know your birth time, check your birth certificate. If you don't have access to your birth certificate, ask your mom. The more accurate the birth time, the better, and from the birth certificate is usually best. If you don't have your birth time and would still like to pull your chart, just know that your rising sign and your houses will not be accurate. Mostly everything else will be. Once you've pulled your chart, I recommend starting with your big three. That is your sun, your moon, and your rising. These are the most personal placements to you, as they concern your identity projection, your personality, and your emotional well-being. So I would start learning those first. Get to know what sign they're in, get to know where they are in your chart, what houses they are, and then from there I would just start with one placement at a time. So take your moon sign, for example. Learn where it is in your chart, what house it's in, what sign is it in, and look up those meanings in your birth chart. Sit with it for about a week. Once you learn what your moon sign is in, start to observe your own emotional reaction and how you respond to things emotionally. Sometimes journaling can help because we can identify in an objective way how we're responding to something emotionally, and then see if it correlates to our birth chart or correlates to our moon sign. And then once you feel like you've learned one placement, you move on to the next. So once you learn your moon, maybe you deep dive into your Mercury, or maybe you deep dive into your Venus, whatever happens to interest you. And you do the same thing over and over again. You see where it is, what sign it's in, and what house it's in. And you just study that. This is a great way to start getting familiar with your birth chart. This is a great way to start to understand the language that is astrology. And it sets up the foundation for learning the more advanced concepts that exist in astrology. And if all of that is still confusing, I recommend sitting with an astrologer and having them explain certain concepts of your chart to you live. If that's something you're interested in, I offer that, and you can click the link in my bio to learn more. So I hope by this point you understand that astrology is like a language. Your birth chart is a snapshot of the sky when you were born, and you can approach your birth chart in 3 different layers, from the planets to the signs to the houses. This is what you need to start learning your birth chart, to start learning astrology, and to have another tool in your toolbox for self-awareness. That's how I think about astrology. It's an objective view of a subjective experience, which allows us to have greater self-awareness and to have us lead happier and healthier lives. There's a lot more to a birth chart than what I've laid out here, but these are the foundations. Be on the lookout for my upcoming video where I talk about aspects, which is how the planets talk to each other. And this just adds another layer of nuance and detail to your birth chart. If this video helped you understand your birth chart, I'd love if you could subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and leave a comment down below if this helped at all. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm the Virgo Godmother. Bye-bye.